You're listening to Commander Central, and we're kicking this show off by saying congrats to Ryan and Brando at CCO Podcast for hitting 100 episodes. So let's hit their theme song.
Welcome to Commander Central, episode 79, Breaking the Bank. Today we are going to talk about cards that hit you hard in the wallet and whether or not those cards are worth it in Commander. I am Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
You guys keeping warm today in this miserably cold afternoon?
For now.
Trying to, anyway?
Yeah.
I had to shovel my driveway out, and I was literally numb after I was done. I don't want to do that again. I'm good. I think I'm done for the winter. I think I'm just going to let it go at this point.
You have a child. He could shovel for you.
He could have. I worked from home today, so I just did it before he got home. He actually is fairly helpful, although he does like to. He's not a very efficient at shoveling. He likes to scoop the snow and throw it over his shoulder, which as far as saving energy isn't the most efficient. And then if you're not paying attention, you'll get a face full of snow. But he actually does help.
That's good.
So, any fun games get played this week at the shop from either you two gentlemen? Chris, we were discussing this off camera. Chris stopped in long enough to drop off a deck you borrowed from me, and then you left.
Yep.
And Max only played a couple games.
Yep. And then I came home and edited the Damia deck tech that aired last week.
Nice job on that, by the way.
Thank you. I remembered to keep all the audio in it this time.
I scumbagged Max out in a game. I comboed him.
2 weeks in a row, people.
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row, he infinite comboed in a different format.
Yes.
You didn't need Tezzeret this time.
Now, in my defense, I tutored for none of the pieces.
Nope.
And it was in part enabled by someone else's memory jar to put pieces in my graveyard.
Mill again.
And then I drew a what's the flyer?
Junk diver.
I drew a junk diver and had a sack outlet, and was able to play
Mere Battlesphere.
Mere Battlesphere with Nim Deathmantle out and get Veil into play, and it was all stuff people could respond to, but no one had answers in hand. It was all very fair, it was like a 5-card combo.
It was. You played Vela, and I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden, you bring back the Mere Battlesphere, and you play Nim Deathmantle. I'm like, you just won. And you sat there for a minute, and you're doing the math, and
I'm trying to figure it out.
You won.
Yeah. So that wasn't a scumbag move. I think that was earned. That was earned. I got there. I didn't have to do anything.
I'm going to give you one more pass.
Okay.
If
you
do it next
again
week.
this week. I will make a general point. I think you weren't in this game, Max. And I don't want to. I'm trying to find a way to be polite. I don't know. I don't think the person involved listens to the podcast, so I don't think I'm going to hurt anyone's feelings. But I'm going to be vague in general anyway, and just say that if you're playing a deck that is doing a really specific thing, and that specific thing is going to make you lose or make someone else win the game, maybe don't do that thing for a while. And in the case I'm thinking of, it was a dedicated discard deck.
Okay.
And the player playing it had, knocked 3 of the 4 people, including himself, down to 1 card in hand. And the 4th player was playing a Varina deck and was able to draw a significant amount of cards off of Varina and get that engine going. If that happens and that one player pulls ahead and is able to then draw a bunch of cards, you probably should stop forcing everyone else to discard.
Because your answers are going to go away.
Right, and that was not what happened. The person playing the discard deck kept casting the all players discard 1 card, so everyone loses our 1 card, and the Varina person just throws a Gravecrawler in the graveyard and laughs.
And thank you.
Yeah, and I've seen that with mill decks, and I've seen that with discard decks also are the ones that tend to work that way, but all you're doing is helping someone else win, and that drives me nuts in games when people just get tunnel vision like that and start making plays that I don't want to say ruin the game, but they ruin the ability to play Magic in an intelligent way, kind of.
Yeah.
So it's just frustrating. Other than that, games are pretty good. Oh, I lost to a Nezahal dinosaur deck with a World Slayer on it.
Oh.
Which destroys all permanents, and then the player was able to pitch 3 cards
to save
Nezahal, and everyone's just like, "Oh, okay, well you just won." That's talking about land destruction with a plan. Well, you've got a plan then. You've just destroyed everything, and you have a dinosaur in play. Oh, okay, well you're gonna win.
That's awesome, to be quite
Yeah,
honest.
actually, yes. It was. I felt like you earned that. Nezahal definitely not like an easy deck to play anyway.
And World Slayer's 5 to play and 5 to equip, I
believe
think.
so, yeah.
I mean, you're spending 10 mana if you don't have a free way to attach it.
You need to have the 3 cards in hand to pitch to save Nezahal at the same time. It was enough setup that it didn't feel remotely bad. MVP card, I will say I saw 2 different games where an Arcane Denial stopped somebody from winning a game. We've talked about the card before, or we talked about how much we like counter spells that are easy to cast, whether it's 1 in a blue or, original counter spell for 2 blue, but we like those cheap, easy counter spells. And both times it was a situation where I actually wasn't sure the person had a counter spell because they only had 1 blue source and a soul ring or something sitting there. When someone has 2 islands sitting untapped, you always assume they have something, but when they only have 1 blue source, you're never sure.
Right.
And both times it was somebody that was like, I don't know if anyone has an answer. And it was an Arcane Denial both different times in 2 different games. So I'm a fan of that card in general, but I just wanted to point out that in one night I saw it stop games from closing out because it was a clutch counter that is really easy to cast and really easy to hold mana for. And I would also mention that I made a post on Twitter this week about targeted land removal.
Yes.
And 2 different times I also saw Cabal Coffers with an Urborg get hit by... one time was a Ghost Quarter, once was Strip Mine, but it was both situations too where the player was in a situation where if they had access to the 14 mana off that, you were just going to lose the game, and they dropped their Cabal Coffers, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to blow that up right now, and they got their 1 turn because you can tap it in response,
right?
But it wasn't nearly as bad as it was going to be. So run your targeted land removal lands; they will keep you from losing the game.
Oof.
If you want to pick yourself up a Strip Miner, a Ghost Quarter, or Tectonic Edge, how would you do that, Max?
Head over to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code CMDR in all caps, and you'll get 10% off all orders, $10 or more.
And if you want to find us online?
Well, you can find us online in multiple different places. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. Search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. Find us on YouTube by searching CMDR Central. You can also find us online at CMDRCentral.com. You can also find us on the iTunes.
Yes, indeed.
By searching CMDR Central. And as Dana always says, give us a 5-star review and tell us we're awesome. And it'll make our egos even bigger.
It absolutely will.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple contests, I think, that are also wrapping up here in the next week-ish.
We do. So on Twitter, we are giving away that beautifully full art altar of the Ley Line of Anticipation.
I don't know what happened different this time. If you did something different with what you wanted people to do to get entered in that, because that has gotten retweeted a gazillion times.
Well, we've done it 3 weeks in a row now.
Okay, instead of forgetting.
Yeah. So we always tweet it out on Tuesdays. It's usually in the evening because I remember when I get to EDH night.
Sure.
I haven't done this yet today. So you'll see that tomorrow after this episode airs. It'll be the last chance of this month to get in on the entry, and then I'll tally up all the retweets and we'll draw a winner.
It is a really good-looking card, and we've gotten great feedback on it.
Yes. We also have on Patreon, we're giving away a Ravnica Allegiance bundle to a lucky patron supporter. And we're just about 5 people away from from the Vault giveaway as well on Patreon.
That's right. Very cool. And speaking of Patreon, if you want to support us on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/CMDR
Central.
That would help us keep the lights on and help us buy some cool stuff like new mics to make the show even better, which we're not using right now, but they should be live for the next episode, we think.
Yeah.
And we've been doing some planning just today talking about changes we're going to make when we switch to video here in the not-too-distant future.
Yep. I have to wear pants.
Yes, indeed. But plans are underway for getting Max's lower half clothed fully. So, mostly fully.
Yeah.
Might go with a kilt just to get a nice breeze blowing in.
Besides that, we do have some new patrons to announce. So we want to say thank you to David Delp, Austin K. Araby, Frank Parent, and Joe Catrona. So thank you, everybody, for pitching in and showing support to the show. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. We are going to talk about Breaking the Bank right now. And cards that are over $50 and whether or not they are worth it in Commander.
Well, I'll tell you how you don't break the bank.
Okay.
You go to the gas station in the morning, go inside, buy a pizza, realize that you can get 99 cents off of your 2-liter Mountain Dew, get into a conversation with the guy at the counter, forget to tell him you had gas, and drive off.
You did that?
Yes, I did. I did that this morning. Get home, sit there and think about it and go, I only paid like $11 for everything. Something's wrong. Oh, no, I forgot to pay for gas. Go back outside and drive down the gas station and go pay for it.
Had the person noticed?
No, neither. They were just like, okay, so it was you? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to pay for it.
It's better than the cops showing up at your door.
Right?
My favorite part of this whole story is at no point did Max and I say, pizza and Mountain Dew for breakfast?
That's typical.
It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. The wife and I went down there, and they had like a whole pizza already cooked, and I was like, sure, score.
I think that's called brunch.
Yeah, right. So that's okay. So that would be a way to not break the bank, just not paying for your gasoline. I like that. I do think so. Let's throw a few caveats out here. First of all, we're talking about this coming from like a 75% ish perspective on deck building, because once you get into CEDH, everything is worth breaking. I mean, like if you're playing at that level and you're playing the best deck possible to win as tightly as possible, then in that case, it's competitive play.
Right.
Everything's worth it, quote unquote, at that point.
Yep.
So we're talking about this kind of from a casual perspective. Like if you're someone who has their favorite deck, it's your baby, and you're like, okay, I want to save up some money and buy this one really nice card for my deck. We're basically looking at like, is it worth doing that if you're in a position to save up your Christmas money and your Tooth Fairy money and all the money you make turning in bottles at the recycling center.
Or not paying for gas.
Not paying for gas, right, in Chris's case. Is the card that's going to cost you $50, $60, $70, $100, whatever, does it actually make a worthwhile impact on your deck, or are you just doing it because you want it? Because those are different things.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between wanting to foil out a deck and buying a card that's going to make your deck better.
Sure. And in some cases, these cards are the equivalent of foil. They're just flashy. They're probably not making that big of a difference.
Right.
And in some cases, they really are. And we're also not going to really touch on, I don't think, too much the difference in value. So, like, when Ancient Tomb was a $50 card 3 months ago, I would say Ancient Tomb was definitely worth your $50.
Right.
Versus something like Tarmogoyf is never going to be worth $90. But the amount of value you get for your Ancient Tomb at $50 versus what you get for, I'm trying to think of an example. I don't even know, a dual land.
Right.
Like Ancient Tomb is always going to be better dollar value wise for $50 than a Underground Seas at $600. We're not going to deal with the percentage. We're just going to say, is it a good enough card to spend 50 plus on, regardless of how high that number kind of is.
Right.
So we'll put those caveats out here first and then just talk about some specific cards. And we're basically, the list we have here is most cards. We left a few off that are outrageously expensive or super, super narrow that people just aren't ever going to probably seriously consider. But most of the ones on here are ones people can actually find and might want to put in decks. And we're going to take a look at our opinions on whether or not they're worth it. And the first ones we'll start with, just in one big bundle of 10, are the original ABUR duels. So if you've got your 2 or 3 color deck and you want to pimp it out and go that last mile, do you guys think it's worth it to put original duels in your deck? Versus like if you have the option to chase down the duels versus say something else.
No, I really don't.
Chris, what do you think?
It's totally worth it.
You think so?
You're talking to a modern and legacy player here.
Right, sure. And from that perspective, definitely. Like if you are playing the perfect everything, but outside of that, if you just want to play a deck that's fun, is it a reasonable like?
Is it worth shelling out a couple $100
Sure.
for a Savannah?
Or if you have the option to target like 5 different things, where would that sit in the list? Would it be the last thing you do, or the first thing you do if you're making that jump?
Probably the last thing.
Okay, that's
for
what
EDH purposes.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I like that way of looking at it. It's the last piece to get, not the first piece to get.
It's never bad. The lands are never ever bad in a deck. They're quite good. But the amount of times that Tundra in Max's Brago deck has changed the game, if that would have been a Plains, is I mean,
or even a Hallowed Fountain.
Right.
That's a great comparison because
Exactly.
that's dirt cheap because it just got reprinted.
I mean, it's insignificant, the amount of differences that makes in your deck.
Right.
So if you have a choice between upgrading a card we'll discuss later on, Mana Drain, if you have a choice between turning that Cancel into a Mana Drain or turning your Hallowed Fountain into a Tundra, you'd probably turn your Plains into a Tundra. the mana drain is worth it, and we'll probably all agree to that later on, versus that Tundra, I would say, is absolutely a foil, the equivalent of a foil.
Yeah.
It's just not going to make a difference. And I would say that's true of all the dual lands, all 10 of those. So I think we're all in agreement that duals, which are probably the most obvious one, probably aren't. Maybe, well, I'd say even then it's tough in a 5-color deck. Being able to fetch perfectly any one of those 10 duals is super, super nice. But that's also, you're not saying I'm going to buy one dual. I'm buying one dual for $250 or something, versus I'm buying 10 duals for
a couple grand.
Right, $3,000 or $4,000.
The upside to duels, and this is going to go into a finance perspective, is that they're always sought after.
Yes,
Anyone will buy them. Any shop will buy them off you. They're extremely good trade fodder when you're trading for another duel or something else. So I think duels are worth it in that aspect.
They're a relatively
compared
safe
to a couple
investment.
of the other stuff
Sure.
on our list.
They're a very safe investment.
Yep.
The other thing I would note about duels that does hurt them a little bit, I know hurts them is the right word, but every time they print another Battle for Zendikar land cycle, or a cycle like the cyclers from Amonkhet that are dual lands that you can fetch, yes, they're not quite as good as dual lands, but they also make them less necessary in your deck because
they just go up in price farther.
They still go up in price farther.
Every time
Absolutely.
they print another one, they go up in price farther. I don't understand it.
But it also becomes like you have less holes in your deck too, where you feel like I
Yep.
need to fill them. Even the Battlebound lands, they're not fetchable, but it's one of those things where like I just have so many good lands in my 2 or 3 color deck right now. You miss them even less.
Yeah.
And the upgrade is even smaller when you do make that upgrade.
Yep, I would 100% agree with that.
Wheel of Fortune is sitting at around about $90 right now. It is the original, it's where the term wheel comes from. Each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards for 3 mana. How about Wheel of Fortune?
I think this is worth breaking the bank on.
Totally necessary, says the red mage.
Yeah. I mean, it's a red card that draws you cards for 3 mana.
For 3 mana. Reforge of Soul exists, but it's 5 unless you happen to get lucky and
Miracle it.
Wheel of Fortune is always 3 mana to put 7 cards in your hand in red.
Yes.
If you are playing a mono red deck or a Boros deck in particular, and your grandma sent you a $100 check for your birthday, and you want to buy 1 magic card for your mono red or Boros deck, I'd buy Wheel of Fortune.
I'd buy the locket.
I was going to go
have
with
enough
the key
money
rune.
left over for it. You'd buy having plenty of money left for that $100 check from grandma.
I feel like if you're really good friends with your LGS owner, they'll probably just throw that locket in for free.
I'm gonna buy that Wheel of Fortune in the cabinet. Can you throw in a Boros locket? They'll probably say yes.
The sad part about like a card like this is that it was only like a $40 card for the longest time.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I actually, when we came back to Magic, we all started playing Commander, roughly Return to Ravnica. I don't even know if it was 40. I feel like it was like in the 20s at that point in time.
Because I think I had 3 of them at one point, and it went up to almost $50, and I got rid of 2 of them. And then literally 2 weeks later, they got bought up and spiked, and I regretted the decision.
Because I believe at the time, I think the Judge Foil, because there is a Judge Foil, because there was a window there where they were reprinting
Reserved
list cards in foil. I think the Judge Foil was under 100 at the time.
Now it's not.
It is not under 100 now. Even the regular revised one is closing in on 100. But yes, I think that's one we all agree. If you are in those colors and you got a nice check from grandma for your birthday, that's one I would pick up. Candelabra of Tawnos. What do you guys think of Candelabra?
Worthless card.
Are you saying that because you've lost to it? Or
Oh, yeah, I have. I've lost to it a few times.
Does that get played in High Tide? Legacy High Tide?
Yeah.
and 1v1 EDH, and
Oh, sure.
that's what I was referencing.
It's much more limited. I don't want to say it's much more limited. I think you only want to run it in a monocolored deck, maybe, that has doublers of some sort, or if your commander's a mana doubler, like the new one from
Rivals?
from Allegiance that doubles that has the mana doubler built in, but you can only play. Although you can only cast creature spells if it's out. But I think if you are running a deck with a bunch of different ways to double your mana, that's where it gets really great, because it basically winds up being 1 mana for another mana doubler on top of all that.
I think this card is definitely, you need to have a purpose to buy it. Like, it's a combo enabler. You know, it doubles all your mana, triples all your mana. If you're just running it to say I'm running a Candelabra, I don't think it's worth the almost $800.
Yeah, I'm looking at Wheel of Fortune. I feel like Wheel of Fortune is a really obvious, easy one to say. I've got the $100 from Grandma. I'm going to buy Wheel of Fortune from a red deck. Candelabra. If I found one tomorrow in a collection I spent $10 for, I have multiple monocolor decks that run a bunch of mana doublers. Particularly my Zero deck, which is white, and my green one that has, I think there's like 6 doublers in my mono green deck. I still don't know if I would run it. I don't know if I need. If I already have one doubler out, do I need a second one? Is that going to? It's almost overkill in Commander. 1v1's a different beast. I just don't think. Maybe if you have that Omnath Locus of Mana deck and you want to put all the mana in the world into Omnath, but even then, I feel like
they just Doomblade it.
Sure, right.
They can do that.
But if you're if you have the ability to make enough mana that you care about using Candelabra, your Omnath is probably already in a position to kill somebody.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad card, but I wouldn't envision myself. If this was $100, same as Wheel of Fortune, I don't know if I would spend the $100 for it for a deck.
No, I definitely think it's a collectible card or
Definitely
a tournament-based card that you would use.
And again, I don't think it's going down in value. I mean, number one, reserve list, that stuff always stays. But it's from Antiquities, so that's one of the least printed sets, just full stop. So we're all kind of in agreement on Candelabra. What's next on the list, Max?
Power Artifact.
And we can kind of do this at the same time because there's a similar card from the same set, which is Transmute Artifact.
Yep.
And those are kind of weird. I will do Power first if Chris wants to give us Transmute after this. But Power Artifact is an enchantment, and an artifact's activated abilities cost 2 less to activate. This can't reduce the amount of mana an ability costs to less than 1. That's just a straight-up combo enabler. You put it on something like
Basalt Monolith.
Yes. Or Rings of Bright Hearth, or things that allow you to then make infinite mana really, really easily. And there's a ton of Power Artifact combos.
For sure.
Again, I think same as Mishra's Workshop, if you have that certain particular deck with a bunch of those cards in it and you want to push the power level up, if you've got a 2-color Saheeli, new Saheeli Commander Artifact deck, and you want to put a Volcanic Island in it, like we said, that's probably never going to change the game. There's a ton of times when you top deck this Power Artifact and look at your board state and go, oh, I'm just going to generate infinite mana right now and win.
Yep.
So I think this is one, if you have that artifact deck, similar to Mishra's Workshop, it's probably worth it if you can find one.
Come down and visit us in Eau Claire, because I know a game shop that has one sitting in
They
their
do.
case.
They do. They do indeed. I do not have the deck to run it. And it's actually, it's similar to Wheel of Fortune in that it's $100, $120, I think, roughly. Yep. But it's not also $1,500. That's still a lot of money. I'm not saying $120 is cheap, but if I was looking at buying that or a dual land for a deck, I'd buy this all day long for that artifact deck.
This would be a card on like my GP list of things I want to pick up.
Yes, I would agree with that. So how about Transmute Artifact, Chris?
Transmute Artifact is a sorcery for 2 mana, very similar to the other one. This one, though, says sacrifice an artifact. If you do, search your library for an artifact card. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the sacrifice artifact's converted mana cost, you just put it right in the battlefield. If it's greater, you pay the difference.
So basically, it's what Tinker was, which is banned. Tinker was an attempt to make a fair Transmute Artifact, and that didn't work out so well for them. But this lets you turn any artifact basically into a different artifact.
Yep.
And they've made this on other cards. Fabricate kind of does that, and we have commanders that do this. Kind of Arkham Dagsson does a similar thing. So does Muzio. This, however, is probably the cheatiest version of that.
For sure.
However, I can say I don't know if I've ever seen this cast in a game. I've seen Power Artifact, but I've never seen anyone use a Transmute.
I don't think I have either. I mean, it's just a combo enabler essentially.
Similar to Power, but it's probably less easy. Like you're probably already running a bunch of those things like Basalt Monolith or Grim Monolith in your artifact deck in the first place. So Power Artifact going in that deck just makes the things you are already doing that much better. Transmute, you probably need to have a specific package of things and know what you're going to transmute. If I get this out, I'm definitely going to go get this one combo piece to do something else. And you also have the added problem of if you're playing an artifact deck that has access to black, for example,
you have way better tutors.
You already have a bunch of other tutors. You don't necessarily need this. I mean, again, talking CEDH level stuff, well, you want every option in those decks. But for the average person, if you just want to build your
Vela.
Right. My Vela deck, I mean, I just would never run it in there. I don't.
Right.
I have 1 or 2 tutors in that deck as it is. I don't need a third one, and there's no one piece I could consistently get to win a game, and that's not the game I'm going to play anyway. So this is one I would say probably isn't worth, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with this. Generically, I would not think this is worth spending the money on.
What do you fall, Chris? You have a puzzle. You're unsure, like you're trying to make a decision.
I don't like this card at all. I think having to sack it off to go for something else, it's not worth the price of the card to buy.
For the average deck,
Yeah.
unless you're this feels like a CEDH only. It's like some of these cards I feel like are while really strong also fit in a casual deck. This one doesn't feel that way. This is something you're only playing when you're playing to win immediately.
No, because you got your other blue tutors for artifacts that
Yeah.
you can use too. So
It's relatively easy to replace. Well, that's a good point as well. So now we're going to dip into a couple of these crazy legends enchantments, and there's 2 I will just lump right together right now, which are Nether Void and the Abyss. And they do different things, but they're essentially, I won't read either of them because they have a lot of text. They're basically stacks cards in black. And they're both really, really good.
Yeah.
And they have versions. There's a Magus of the Abyss for the Abyss, and I don't think there's one for Nether Void, which makes spells be countered unless you pay, is it 3 more?
Yep. And they're both world enchantments. We should probably note
Enchant
that.
world, so you can't have them out simultaneously.
Right.
They're both really, really good, and if you're playing, I mean, I will say this, talking at GP Vegas last year, Don Miner of VDH Rec has a mono black stacks deck, and he's like, he picked up was it a one of the 2, I can't remember which one he was looking for. He had the other one.
He picked up an Abyss.
So he had the Nether Void already.
Yep.
But for his stacks deck, because we had this conversation with him about it, there's nothing that he could put in that deck that was the replacement for as a perfect stacks card for that Abyss.
Right.
So I think I would say the same thing for both of these. They are, maybe they're not even CEDH level. They might be too expensive to run in a CEDH deck. I don't know how much stack stuff gets played there. They might actually be too pricey for that level. I'm not sure in terms of casting them. They're definitely not casual fun cards.
No, not at all.
But I think if you are playing mono black stacks or something, nothing else does what they do.
I think the Abyss is the more of the card, or not the Abyss, but the Nether
Void
would
Yep.
be the one that would be more played in fun decks, because all it's doing is just taxing you.
It's a tax spell, right?
Yep. It's not really like shutting off things, or
Sure.
but the Abyss. I love both these cards. I really do.
Legends has a ton of these wonky enchantments that have 16 lines of text on them, and they all are like, I don't know what they were on when they designed some of these cards, but they all are really, really wordy and complicated, but they're cool. I like them all a lot. And if I was playing mono black stacks, I would want both of them. Like, I think
I
for
would
that
too.
deck, if that was my thing, I think if that's your deck, I think they're worth it.
for sure.
If, again, and we keep throwing this caveat out there, if money is no object, I think you're getting what you pay. You're getting the value out of these cards. They definitely do a thing. Moat. How about Moat?
If you would have asked me a year ago,
You'd have said for sure worth it.
for sure worth it. But then you picked one up,
I did pick one up.
and I think it stayed in Asperia for all of like a month.
I drew it, I think, 6 times. And I no joke, every time I drew it, I'd look on the board and go, this does nothing. And it was either because I looked down and like, oh, that person over there is playing Super Friends, and they have the best board state right now, and it does nothing to stop them. And on top of that, Moat prevents all creatures with flying from attacking, period. Not just attacking you. Creatures with flying can't attack.
Creatures without flying.
Or sorry, creatures without flying can't attack. So I look around and say, oh, so that person who's leading the game, it's not going to make a difference for them. And I'm shutting off my other 2 people who also might be attacking that person.
Right.
Or I'd draw it and I'd look over and like, oh, hey, I'm playing against Max. He has Dramoka and a Baneslayer Angel out. That does me no good. And again, same thing. It just keeps the other people from attacking him. Like, it doesn't leave that option out there. One game, it was right after the precons came out, and one of my friends was playing with the Ur-Dragon.
Yep.
And I draw, and I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't do any good against that deck. And, the other, we were down to, it was like down to him and I and somebody else. And the third person, I remember their deck, I was like, well, okay, I'll shut off their Llanowar Elves and whatever else they have, but who cares? It wasn't worth the 4 mana. Like, literally every time I drew it, it was not worth casting.
Yep. I used to run Magus of the Moat, so this would be
You
the
did, yep.
very cheap alternative to this card. So it's just a creature that says creatures without flying can't attack. And that eventually got pulled too because enough people run flyers because flying is good. And it just didn't do enough every time I wanted to play it.
Well, and I also recall it was the same deal. There were times when you would cast it to keep yourself safe, but then it would prevent someone else from attacking the third party because their flyers couldn't attack.
Right.
So it protects you, but it also changes other people doing something that you want them to do. Yeah, I think Moat's a cool card, and I wanted it to be good because I'm like, I'm playing Sphinxes. Every creature's flying. Why not run it? It didn't work.
Yeah.
I was surprised. So I would say no. And Max, I would say your experience, you say no?
I would say no to Moat. If you really want this effect, get the Magus. It's
definitely cheaper, right?
It's cheaper, and yeah, it's on a creature, so it's easier to remove, but it still does the same thing if you really need that type of effect.
And maybe in your meta, you'll find out that it does work great.
Right.
But in my experience, it didn't. What are your thoughts here, Chris?
I don't like it.
You also, in addition to Magus of the Moat, you've got access to Ghostly Prison and Sphere of Safety and Norn's Annex in those colors. If you're splashing to blue like I was with Sphinxes, there's Propaganda and there's War Tax. Like, there's so many different things you can use that needing Moat also, I would say, is not worth it for that reason as well.
Right.
All right. Mana Drain, which we mentioned earlier. And we'll just
You want to lump this in with one right after it?
Force of Will?
Yeah.
Sure. Force of Will, Mana Drain. Thoughts?
I think they're both worth it.
You're talking
Chris?
to a legacy
Yeah.
player again.
Even in Commander, they're worth it. They're just worth it. Force is maybe a little more of a corner case because you need to be able to pitch a blue card.
True.
And you also have to maybe have a deck where you really, really care about stopping someone from board wiping or whatever it is. Or you play against people that play a lot of combo, so you have to deal with them. Whereas Mana Drain, there's no situation Mana Drain isn't
Good.
one of the best counter spells, just period. Like, even if you're not playing in a super competitive environment where you need to stop a combo from happening, and all you're doing is counterspelling somebody's 4 mana. If you're countering someone's Crawl Worm, it's worth it. You've hit them for 6 mana and a tempo hit, and you ramp 6 mana next turn.
Yep.
If you counter a Crawl Worm with Mana Drain, it's worth it.
Wow. I
like how he went so generic with that one.
I love using Crawl Worm for my generic example.
You couldn't have just said Grizzly Bear?
I guess I could have. Wait, okay, so Grizzly Bear being 2 mana, it's
still
it's
2
almost
mana.
worth it. It's still you're hitting someone's tempo, costing them a card, and you're coming up mana.
Yep.
I don't know if I'd do a Grizzly Bear, but like the bar is really, really low for Mana Drain to be worth it.
I think I'd do a Grizzly Bear if they're playing that green enchantment where all vanilla creatures get plus
Sure,
2, plus
if
2.
they have
Right.
Morgana petroglyphs, so yeah. So next on the list we have Earthcraft, which is basically what was the card that we printed in?
Squirrel's Nest.
Well, so it combos with Squirrel's Nest. Cryptolith Rights is essentially
yep.
the card that Cryptolith Rights sparked Earthcraft because people bought Cryptolith Rights and like, this card's really good. And Earthcraft's usually better, not always. So is Earthcraft worth it? What do you guys think?
Yes, I think it is at $57.
Number one, it's close to the list, so it's
Yep.
of these cards we're talking about, it's one of the cheaper ones.
Now, it's not going to go in every single deck, but the deck that you want it in, it is worth that price.
It does have some combos, like you mentioned with Squirrel Nest, where you put Squirrel Nest on a land, tap the land to make the creature to untap the land to make a creature, so you can just infinitely make squirrels with Squirrel Nest.
That are all tapped.
They're all tapped, but if you're playing some kind of red-green deck where you've got Impact Tremors or something out or Perforos in play, you just win the game.
You just go infinite with Gave and Doubling Season.
Right.
Yep.
Or you have an Azure Ultra, you make an infinite mana with it. I mean, there's a whole bunch of combos with Earthcraft. The one thing I will note, I actually have a couple of Earthcrafts. I picked them up cheap years ago, or I found them in collections, and I don't run it in any of my decks, not because I just don't want to, but because for whatever reason it just doesn't quite fit. Like, I was looking at when I built that Saskia deck that has Exalted Creatures. I'm like, I'll put Earthcraft in there because I'm never going to attack with my creatures, so why not use the other creatures I've Exalted to untap lands? Well, except for it's a 4-color deck, and I only have like 10 or 12 basics in it, and Earthcraft only untaps a basic land. So in playtesting, there were enough times when I would play Earthcraft and have 2 or 3 creatures in play and only have 1 basic.
Yeah.
Or none basics. So that's one thing to pay attention with Earthcraft, whereas Crypto with Rights, just you tap a creature for mana. So it doesn't have the combos, but also it doesn't care what kind of lands you have. It just uses those creatures for mana. So in that case, Rights was a better card than Earthcraft was. So I think that's worth at least noting. But generally speaking, if you want the effect, I would say Earthcraft's worth it.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree too.
Intuition, Max.
Intuition is an instant for 2 and a blue, and it says search your library for 3 cards and reveal them. Target opponent chooses one, put that card into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. Then shuffle your library.
What do you think, Intuition?
I think it's fine. It reminds me of Gifts Ungiven, and that's banned in Commander.
Yes, right.
So I think it's probably because you only get 1 card versus 2.
Gifts Ungiven, you can make the perfect pile where the person loses no matter what they pick, where you can grab a combo.
Right.
Whereas Intuition, you can't quite do that as easily. I like Intuition a lot. I think the fact that the cards go into your graveyard definitely makes it so there's some decks where it's a lose choice.
Right.
Sultai Sidisi, for example, or
Muldrotha.
Right? Yeah, you don't care what they pick. You're going to recast it in your graveyard anyway.
Yep. Now Chris is over here laughing. So what do you think, Chris?
It's played in Legacy.
Yes.
I'm going to keep going back to this.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's a good fallback. If it's played in Legacy, it's probably worth it in Commander.
Yeah. Because honestly, this is a combo card in my opinion. Because you can search up 3 cards, and pretty much what you're doing is you're like, okay, you're going to tell me which way I get to combo.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes. And I think, even if you are a casual player, if you have a relatively casual Sultai Sidisi deck or a relatively casual Tassiger deck, and Grandma sends you the birthday check, it's a great card in that deck. Even if you're not using it for combo, if you're just using it to go grab one good zombie and a grave crawler that might wind up in your graveyard and something else that's going to give you value from your yard too, it's a great card.
Yeah, like what would you do if, say, they're playing red-blue, they go Intuition, they go, okay, here's an Omniscience, here's a Through the Breach, and here's a Sneak Attack.
Right, yeah.
Right. You're choosing which way I'm going to win the game.
Right.
Because you chose all of those cards because you have a way to win off of them.
Yep, every single one of them.
Yeah, I think
mean.
that's
I love it.
the newest addition to the $50 list here, though, and I think this is the first one. I guess Mana Drain and Force of Will weren't on the reserve list either. Scroll Rack, though, has only recently been a really pricey card. It was $20-ish. I guess that's
when I got
that's
mine.
not cheap, but it's over $50 now.
Mm-hmm.
You guys think of Scroll Rack? Is that worth adding to your deck?
I think when you have a deck where you need the card selection or that quick way to draw a grip of cards because you choose any number of cards in your hand, you set them aside, you draw that many, you put them back on top. It's definitely worth it. I mean, mono red, you run it in Dejaru, right?
I do.
And I think you run it in Sphinxes?
I do run it in Sphinxes as well.
I mean, it's just the card filtering.
Yes.
You get a new set of cards, and you can reorder the ones you didn't want to set up your next couple turns. This works really well, though, with shuffle effects.
I did not read this. I play this card.
Okay.
A lot in 1v1. And I always set up the stack that I'm going to put back on top of my library before I look at the other cards. According to the card text, you can re-look at that stack after you've already seen, say you pitch 7 cards back into it.
Yeah.
It's like, let's look at the next 7. Okay, now let's look at this 7. How do we want to set this
up?
Yeah,
you can make the decision after you see what you draw.
I really need to read the card text.
The more you know.
The real power of this, too, I will use Wheel of Fortune for the example again, because if you're playing Boros for mono red, Wheel of Fortune's an almost auto run if you can get one. I feel like in mono white or Boros as well, this is the same thing, because if not only is land tax always a good card in general, if you happen to have land tax out and have a scroll rack, it's basically draw 3, because you're going to put those 3 lands back. You're going to draw 3 with scroll rack, put your 3 lands back on top, and then next turn get to shuffle again when you land tax. So you'll shuffle those lands back in, grab 3 more out, and get to look at a top 3 fresh ones every time. So that reason alone, I feel like in mono white and Boros, if you have land tax in your deck, which you probably do, it's almost always worth it. And where it's really strong in my Sphinx deck is that I draw so many cards in that deck that I tend to oftentimes have 8, 10, 12, 14 cards in my hand. And if not more, there's been enough times I've had a bigger hand than I have a library, and it basically lets me infinitely tutor. It winds up being where I can doomsday pile my entire library if I want to, but at the very least I can just get whatever 1 or 2 cards I want.
I believe this card is good in any deck. despite what Max was saying. I think it's any deck can use it.
Even if you're not playing White or Boros, I would say this: you are never going to draw a Scroll Rack. I mean, okay, I shouldn't say that. If it's end of the game and you're hell bent and you have no cards in hand, you don't want to draw it. But I would say 95% of the time when you draw a Scroll Rack, it's going to be useful.
Yep.
Like the worst case scenario is you treat it like a Divining Top.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say
if you get the God Hand, people who see Soul Ring on turn 1 that I never see in an entire game.
Right.
Right. Soul Ring into Scroll Rack, and you're just like, okay, cute, that guy's going to be ahead of us forever.
Yeah. It also feels bad to remove too.
Yes, it does.
Even as strong as it is, it's like, oh, what a waste. Because I know there's going to be a doubling season in 2 turns. I don't know which I had this removal spell for.
The only removal spell I have is a Beast Within.
Yeah, right.
Get rid of it. Now he's going to start smacking with this 3/3.
I'm with you. Mox Diamond. So EDH,
This is another
CEDH.
card that just spiked recently.
And if you're in CEDH, yes, it's an auto run. For casual players, if you're playing a game, is Mox Diamond worth running?
No.
Max?
I'm reading the card because I had to refresh what it
Okay.
does.
So why don't you just read it to us here?
Yeah. So Mox Diamond says, if Mox Diamond would enter the battlefield, you may discard a land instead. If you do, put Mox Diamond onto the battlefield. If you don't, put it into your graveyard. And then it just taps for any color.
Yep.
And
So you have to pitch a land to put this in play.
Yep. And it costs 0.
Costs 0 to cast to make any mana.
I don't think it's worth it.
I've ran one in some semi-casual decks before, and it's been fine. I feel like unless you're trying to win super fast, again talking about 1v1 or CEDH, I would agree it's probably not worth it. Having to pitch a land, particularly early on, it never feels great. That can hit a lot of decks really, really hard. And late game, it's not impactful enough. So unless you are playing in a format where you're trying to win as quickly as you can, I would say it's probably not worth it. Particularly as it is like $150 almost now.
Try a little higher.
Is it more than that now even? Oh,
Over
man.
200.
Oh,
I
wow.
was gonna say, it spiked up to over 300, and then it settled down into like the 150 mark, and now it's going back up again.
And now there's some decks like Gitrog Monster maybe you'll want. If you
I know a wonderful
Grandma
card
would-
shop in Eau Claire,
Yeah.
Wisconsin, who has some of
Yeah.
these.
But if again, Grandma's like, I'll buy you whatever you want for your Bog Frog deck. And you're like, okay, well, Mox Diamond's probably good in that deck. Because you can pitch your land, because you'll draw a card off the land you pitch. Or maybe even in Windgrace or something. If you're like got a perfectly tuned Windgrace deck and Grandma wants to buy you a card for your Cat Dad deck, well, you can pitch a land and get it back. There's some good synergy there.
Right.
I would say, generally speaking, it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
This one's going to go to Chris. Sliver Queen.
Yeah, what about my homegirl?
Your Bay.
So is it? I'll ask you because I don't even have an opinion because I haven't looked closely enough. Is it the best Sliver Commander? Because there's what there's Legion, there's Overlord. I think there's one more, right?
Hive Lord.
Hive Lord.
For casual play, no.
Okay.
If you want to build a really tight ship, then yes.
Because which one is she? She makes a token, correct?
Yep, she makes a token for 2 mana. You create a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token.
Okay.
Easy combo.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of slivers that require sacrifices or
Yep.
or do some kind of interaction.
Now the other Sliver Overlord tutors up a sliver out of your deck, which would be more of a casual play.
Okay, and one gives them all indestructible?
That's Hive Lord.
Hive Lord, okay.
And
And
the
Legion-
other one, Legion gives
Legionnaire.
them +1/+1 for each other. It's pretty much a coat of arms for slivers.
Okay. So they're all, I mean, if you were playing 5-color slivers, you probably want all of them at some
Yes.
point. But if you're playing slivers,
She's an auto.
you want it. I think you want it. And I think also, not only do you want it, it probably would annoy you if you didn't have it.
Yes, this one in particular.
Right. You'd be like, oh man, that's the only sliver I need to make this deck feel like I've got all the slivers. Volrath's Stronghold.
I don't remember what this one does. I know it's like sack a creature, create mana, something.
That would be Phyrexian Tower. Volrath's Stronghold lets you put a creature card from your library on top of your graveyard. Or excuse me, from your graveyard on top of your library.
For 1 and a black.
For 1 and a black. So there's a few different things that it's kind of basically Academy Ruins does it for artifacts. There's one that does this for just zombies.
Yep.
And then I can't think of the name of it right now. So yeah, Volrath Stronghold. The art on it, first of all, not to get into that for all these cards, the art looks gorgeous. I love the art in this card. But what do you guys think of it?
I think this is a card you would run if you really have no other way to do graveyard recursion.
It's a really specific card.
Yes.
I tell you what, I've ran it before in a deck. I had it in my was it my Tesa deck for a while, my old original Tesa deck, because I had one and I wanted to try it. It's a good card, but I think it's the kind of thing that maybe if you are playing some kind of combo or something, but like for generic value, it's fine. But I don't know if it's.
I don't think it's that good. I think the only reason that it's at this price is because
reserve
of the
list.
set. Yeah,
it's reserve list, and it's an old card.
Yep.
Again, now we have a little bit of top deck stuff. So like maybe if you are playing Amanatu or you have Yanet or something, and you've got stuff in your graveyard, you want to put those creatures back on top to cast them for free. Again, talking about grandma buying you a birthday card. What do you want for your net deck, son? Buy me a Volrath Stronghold. Then yes, but
I went to school with a Volrath.
Right. But yeah, I think it's a good card, but I don't know if I necessarily needed any of my decks. If it was $3, then I'd probably and you're like, yeah, I'll throw it in my black deck. Why not?
I think if it was like $10, I'd pick one up.
Sure.
What I don't like about it is it's targeted, so it can be responded to, and that can hose your entire plan.
Yeah. And it's also one of those things I just like. It sucks up your draw because it's going on top of your library, so you're not. I shouldn't say you're losing a card, but you're losing that draw. Like you're replacing that draw.
Right.
Which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but it's also not quite as good as going into your hand. It's fine. I just don't necessarily love it.
Yeah.
So we're all kind of slightly underwhelmed by it for being as expensive as it is. How about Survival of the Fittest?
Didn't this just get a Judge promo? Or was
that was Food Chain?
That was Food Chain,
I believe. Survival of the Fittest is on the reserved list. 1 and a green for an enchantment, and you can spend a green to discard a creature card and search your library for a creature card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So basically, you pitch a creature card to search your library to 2-drop 1 2-hand.
Llanowar Elves turns into Blightsteel Colossus.
I think
Firehoof Behemoth.
Right.
Yep.
That's why it's banned in Legacy.
And isn't there's a creature that does this, right? Is it Elvish Piper, or does that one what you play one from your hand
that
for
puts
free?
it right into hand. There is an elf that does it. I think it's Fauna Shaman.
Yes.
Yep, that's it. So there is a creature version of this. Still, this lets you play it and immediately, like for 3 mana, you play it for 2 and can immediately use it to pitch a creature card. And there are some decks where the discard isn't a downside. That's not a bad thing. That's a bonus. I think the decks that want this, I think it's worth the money in those decks.
I do too. Well, last time I looked at this card, though, it wasn't over $80.
It was not. It was hovering at like 25 for a long time, and it's now well over 50.
That Judge promo art is gorgeous.
It's a great looking card.
But that's a lot of money.
Yes, it is.
So that's the weird thing. It's only legal in 2 sets.
Yeah, Commander and Vintage.
Yep. It's banned in 1v1, not legal in anything else, banned in Legacy. Should not be as expensive as it is. It's not good enough. Don't buy it. I want it to settle.
I think there are some cards on this list that cards we talked about, like that you don't need a plan for. I don't think you need a plan for Wheel of Fortune. I think if you're playing Boros or Red, you want Wheel of Fortune. I think Survival of the Fittest, I think you probably want a plan. You need to have creatures that are worth getting. You don't think so?
No, this is pretty much a card. If I'm playing mono green and I'm playing Mana Dorks or like low curve stuff, and we're at turn like 30 or something, I draw this and I go, okay, cool. I can pitch this dork that's been sitting in my hand.
That's
and
true.
Go for anything.
I'm trying to think like in terms of my green decks though. So I look at my Sigarda deck. Do I care? Even like Reki. Okay, I've got some creatures that might give me an overrun, but like for the most part, I'd rather just cast a body and draw a card and keep the chain going. So maybe I'm thinking too much in terms of my decks.
Right.
But I will say this, whenever I've seen it played, it's been trouble. I've never seen this card come down and I've shrugged. It's always been...
Even this card, I wouldn't consider a combo card. It just fits into a green deck.
It's just
period.
value.
Yep. It is pure good stuff.
Like you said, Crater Hoof's perfect, but like there's a Pathbreaker Ibex, or there's the new baby Crater Hoof that was just in Ravnica Allegiance.
Yep.
There's a ton of cards that you can just go get and have a really good chance of winning the game with this.
Yep.
And like you said, even if you're just pitching away your Llanowar Elves that you don't want to go get something, not even game breaking, just something more useful than Llanowar Elves.
To put you up on tempo or something, yeah.
So let's box the next two together.
Sure.
So we're going to be talking about Gaia's Cradle and Sarah's Sanctum.
Yeah.
These are both lands
Man.
that tap for a lot of mana if you meet their criteria.
So ignoring the price again, because like Cradle's over 3 and Sarah Sanctum is a little more affordable at 100, but neither of them are cheap. In the decks that you want to run these cards, they end games. Kind of. I mean, if you are playing an Enchantress deck and you drop a Sarah Sanctum on turn 5 and you're tapping it for 6 or 7 mana, which pretty frequently you are, then you're going to cast your enchantment, which is going to draw you 1 or 2 or 3 cards, depending on what you have in play, which you can then use that mana to play. And assuming you don't get into a disgusting position to just kill somebody that turn,
And you have a candelabra sitting there.
right? Yeah. But then it comes back around. Like both of these tend to roll. You play your Guy's Cradle and tap it for 5 mana because you have 5 dudes in play, and then play 4 guys off that mana.
Yep.
And if you don't win the game that turn and it comes back around to you, well, you've got 9 people you're tapping it for, and you're playing that much more stuff. Like, I think Enchantress you tend to get the chains going because you're running so many cards that draw you cards when you play an enchantment and it builds, whereas Cradle, I've seen people play Guy's Cradle and just empty their hand and then they're done.
Yep.
Like, okay, your Guy's Cradle taps for 12, but you're in top deck mode, and it's maybe a little bit less scary at that point. Whereas in an Enchantress deck, once you get to that point, your hand's just probably not going to get empty. It's just going to roll downhill from there.
No, I don't think Guy's Cradle's worth it at the price tag that's at, because there's a functional reprint.
At the difference of the two prices, yes.
Yep, because you can get Growing Rights of Itlimoc, which is basically Guy's Cradle when it flips.
Yeah.
Some would say
Better,
a
because it
little
always
better,
taps for a
better.
colorless.
Exactly.
Yep. Sarah Sanctum has not seen something, but it would not surprise me if something comes.
No. Yeah, not at all. And right, that's worth pointing out. They both have downsides. They don't tap for anything if there's nothing in play. If you have no creatures in play, a turn 1 Guy's Cradle, you cannot keep a hand with 6 creatures in a Guy's Cradle, because it just doesn't do anything.
Unless the player across from you went first and played an Urborg.
I guess, right.
Go,
That's true. That's true. Same with Sarah Sanctum. Like, you don't want Sarah Sanctum as your only land in hand and a bunch of 1-drop enchantments. But if you draw the opening hand and you've got 2 lands, a Sanctum, and 3 other enchantments, you're just gonna be so far ahead. Same with Guy's Cradle. You open the hand with a Guy's Cradle, a forest, and 4 1-drop elves or something. You are off to the races. Now, do you still have your Cradle, Max? You had one.
I had one, and I sold it at Vegas, and I got
a bunch of regular duels for it.
I got a bunch of regular duels. The shop I sold it to there paid me a little better than what I would have gotten from like Card Kingdom.
Okay.
Because of just the in-person trading credit. I mean, I got a very nice sum of money for it.
Because you didn't really have a deck for it necessarily.
Nope. I mean, at that time I did have my Gahiji Tokens deck,
okay,
but I had a Growing Rights.
For sure.
And that's way easier.
And for a relatively casual deck, you were like, you didn't care.
No. Where I knew I wanted other things to finish kind of around the subject. I wanted the blingy stuff. I wanted my foils. I wanted a Wheel of Fortune because I didn't have one, and some duels. So I just said, okay, I'm never really going to use this card. I'm just going to put it in a binder and let it grow in value. But yeah, so I got rid of mine. I regret it sometimes. Sometimes I'm still like, okay, I got 5 duels out of it. I'm okay.
Right. Yeah.
Time Spiral?
Yeah.
That was a good set.
Yeah.
That was a good set.
Time Spiral was a good set.
All right, let's talk about Time Spiral.
All right. What do you think?
So what was all in Time Spiral? Slivers and... No.
Every keyword.
Sudden spoiling.
Yeah.
Was that in Time Spiral?
Yeah.
Okay, no, we're actually talking about Time Spiral, the card.
The card.
Yep. 6 mana sorcery, exile it, shuffle your hand and graveyard and everything all back in, draw 7 cards.
So
untap 6 lands. That's the big thing. Untap 6 lands.
So if we made Time Twister, which we didn't discuss in this set because it's so prohibitively expensive, the thought process here was if we made Time Twister cost twice as much, but really cost nothing, that's probably going to solve that problem, right? And it turns out it didn't, because it's still a really strong card.
It is.
However...
It's only $50?
Yeah. That's why I looked at it and I shook my head like, what?
Well, here's the thing, though, because
Max is going to Card Kingdom.
I have credit.
I've acquired one, and Max has credit to go buy one right now. But what deck are you going to run it in?
Nothing.
Yeah, you just want one?
I just want one.
And that's the thing. So that's the question. Is it worth it?
No.
If you have a really tuned Nekuzar deck, or maybe, is it Scarab God?
Yeah.
No, not Scarab God. Sorry, Locust God, where you make a locust whenever you draw a card. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Then I get it, because then you're going to make 7 locusts for it, in addition to it being free if you're at 6 mana.
And probably drawing that Wheel of Fortune to make another
Right.
7.
Right, and your mana's all free, so you're going to, particularly a Nekuzar or Locust God, plenty often if you draw this, you can just maybe win. Because you can cast it for free.
I played this card in a deck at one point.
Which one was it?
Commander got banned.
Oh, okay, well, sure, in Leovold. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think it's basically, if you have that perfect deck for it, you want it, and outside of that, I don't know if it is worthwhile. And there's a bunch of alternatives. There's things like Winds of Change, which is, I guess, in red, but like Tolarian Winds, or you have...
I think at the 6 mana point, I think I'd just rather play extra turns.
Sure, if you're going to do that.
Granted, you do untap 6 lands, but I'd rather just play extra turns because that just puts you so much farther ahead.
And it is you always have the risk with these kind of things where you're going to giving someone answers. They're drawing 7 cards too, so
Unless you're playing Leovold, then you go, ha ha ha!
Right.
Surprise!
But you have the chance it's the chance to give everyone else you're playing against a chance to get something that's going to kill you.
This card would be fun in like Two-Headed Giant because I'm reading the rules text. You don't have to untap your lands.
Oh, you can untap theirs.
You can untap any. You don't
untap
have to
6 lands. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Sure.
And they don't have to be lands you control.
It just says untap up to 6 lands. Oh, sure. Very, very infrequently would you ever do that, but sure, that's a nice
I'll
thing
untap
to know.
Very similar to the Teferi text where you just untap 2 lands.
So yeah, I generally speaking, I would say that it's not like Wheel of Fortune where I would say if you're in Boros or red, it's probably worth looking at. I don't know if it's that level of powerful, just generically speaking, but I think in the certain decks it probably is.
Right.
Yogg's Win, a card so good it has win in the name. Chris?
Once again, that's not what it's called.
That's what it's called in
your deck.
In the decks where it's legal too. That's the nickname in Vintage, is Yogg's Win. But it's not that here. It's not as good in Commander as it is in older formats.
What?
It isn't. It's someone who plays it in at least 1 or 2. It's great. It's good. It's good.
I was gonna say every time I see that card casted, it wins the game.
So why it's good in the other formats, and I'll say particularly in something like Vintage, is because when you play it, you're just gonna go fetch land and Black Lotus and Gitaxian Probe, and like you're going to play a bunch of things for no mana,
right?
Basically. Whereas in Commander, it's not quite that awesome. It's good though. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it's really good, and I think we've had this conversation before. If you get 2 things back, 3 things back, it's worth it.
So do you want to know why I have one? And I will tell you the story that's going to sound awful. I had my Glissa deck, and I wanted to get a regrowth for it. A foil regrowth. And the only available foil regrowth, and this was like 5 years ago. The only foil regrowth was the Judge promo, which was like $60 or $70. And I'm like, oh, I guess. And I looked and I'm like, oh, well, I can get the Judge foil Yawgmoth's Will was like 50 or 40. I'm like, oh, well, I will settle for the Judge foil Yawg's Will because I'll save myself $10 or $15. It's not as good. It's way, way better.
I was going to say.
It's way better.
You are underplaying this card so much.
In an attempt to bargain hunt, I got a Judge Foil Yogg's Will in an attempt to save $15 over the Judge Foil Regrowth, which is now down to like, $25 or $30 or something, because that's not in the reserve list and has gotten reprinted in other foil editions, I think in M25, or not M25, Masters 25, yeah. So that's the only reason I have a Yawgmoth's Will. And I think we discussed this just recently on our Settle for Less series. Unlike in Vintage where you're making these huge, splashy, crazy plays with it, you can treat it like a regrowth. If you're doing nothing else but making it into a 3-mana regrowth, it's still almost always worth it. Eternal Witness.
Worst case scenario, you're bringing back 2 things.
You're almost always bringing back a land very frequently.
Yep.
And some other spell to save your butt. When I cast it on my Glissa deck, which I'm not necessarily doing anything degenerate, but plenty of times I will cast it. Well, okay, a few degenerate things.
That's the guy who's infinite comboed 2 weeks in a row now.
Not with Glissa, though. But, yes, plenty of times I play it in that deck, and I'll bring back a fetch land, and I'll bring back like a Mishra's Bauble, which I'll immediately sack to get 1 more card draw off it, and then I will cast a Go for the Throat or something from the graveyard to kill something that's a problem, and then cast a Demonic Tutor for something else that's like very frequently, and that's average.
This is a bad card.
I didn't say it was bad. I think it's really good. I think it's really, really good.
That's settling for a lot.
Yes. Well, right. That's the thing, though. Like talking about settling, you don't need to have. I guess that is crazy. That to me, I don't know what. I remember when I first got it, just thinking it was just because it was called Yogg's Win. Like that's what they called it. You cast and you win the game, and it didn't do that in Commander, but it still generates a ton of value. So if Grandma wants to buy you a Yogg Must Will for your black deck, let her buy you one. So I would say it's worth it. Here's one for Max, because I know Max plays this card. Chris does too, but I'll throw it to Max. Grim Monolith.
Yeah, Grim Monolith is a 2-mana mana rock that taps for 3.
So that right there is why I think Chris plays it in 1v1.
Yep.
Although a lot of people play it in 1v1. That's all it is for the most part. Like, you guys don't care about anything else. You don't care about blinking it out or putting power artifact on it. Your main concern is you're gaining 1 mana. It's almost like a Lotus Petal. You're playing it for 2 and getting 3.
Yes. Now
the 4 mana to untap it becomes irrelevant for the most part.
No, I mean, because in 1v1, you're playing Paradox Engine, and it's just going to untap.
Sure.
In Brago, I blink it, and it untaps.
Right. In Brago, you're never paying the 4 either.
It's very rare. Very rare. This is unlike something like Mana Crypt. This doesn't deal you the damage.
Right.
That's why it costs a little more to untap. But at the same time, you can untap it at any time.
Correct.
Crypt is only during your upkeep.
That's the beauty of Grim Monolith, and to a much lesser extent Basalt Monolith, is you can hold that mana in your hand for a counterspell or whatever, and then before the end of the player's turn, before your turn starts, untap it then for the 4 mana.
Right.
The flexibility is really, really useful.
Mm-hmm.
Power-wise, like, your deck's stronger with the Grim Monolith, I think, full stop. Even your average player's deck is better with the Grim Monolith.
This falls into the category of fast mana.
Yes.
So this, Crypt, Vault, Soul Ring, the stuff that gets you more mana than what you paid for it. Yeah, any generic deck is going to be better with these cards as long as you know how to use them.
Like, I have one. Well, and let's talk about some of the fast mana, because this is a little bit lower on the list, but we'll throw it in here. Mana Crypt.
Yep.
Is kind of the same way. I run Mana Crypt in one deck right now currently, but every deck is better with Mana Crypt, I think. Like, you're not gonna, for the most part, like, there's probably some, like, my deck's never going to win before turn 18, so it might well kill me, and maybe you don't want it then if you're playing in a super slow deck.
Yeah.
But I think Grim Monolith is the same category. You're almost always, generally speaking, better off with both those two cards, even if I don't run them. So if your grandma says, can I get you a Crypt or a Grim Monolith? I think
sure.
The answer is almost always yes. They're worth it. Chris wishes Grandma would buy him a Grim Monolith.
I cannot wait to write the description for this episode now.
Dana keeps talking about your grandma buying you Magic cards.
Disclaimer for all you kids: don't ask Grandma.
Don't ask Grandma to buy you a Grim Monolith,
because you'll end up getting a Magic card set, right. Tricks,
or she'll overpay for a Basalt Monolith,
or Basalts.
Right, or Basalts. Right, there you go. Academy Rector is also a recently spiked card.
Stupid Bant-Chantress.
Did you play one, Chris, in Ural?
I did not.
Is Ural still together?
Nope, I got rid of it.
Did you? So
for the same reason as I played when I played Sigarda, and I just crushed that one night. I was like, yeah, I don't like playing like this. It's stupid.
It's fun to do once in a while, and yeah, it's also tough to interact with both those decks, whether it's a Ural or Sigarda.
Yep.
My opinion here, and I would guess you guys probably share it about Academy Rector. If you are playing that Enchantress deck, it's obviously better off. Your deck's obviously better with that card. And if you're not playing Enchantress, it's probably not worth running. Like, so I guess that's a question. If you had 3 or 4 enchantments in your deck that you were just using for different purposes, is it worth having Rector out to just go grab one and put it straight into play?
I'd be fine with it.
It's probably not bad. It's probably not a bad play.
I think for the price point it's at, because it's about $100.
Yeah.
Unlike Wheel of Fortune, you need a plan for this card, no
sure.
matter what.
Probably.
I don't care if you have 4 enchantments, like you just said, or you're running a dedicated enchantment deck. You need a purpose. You just can't slap this in because I'm running Phyrexian Arena and I need to go get it.
I would.
Oh, Lordy.
Well, Smothering Tithe maybe now.
True.
Maybe that's your equivalent of Phyrexian Arena in white.
Because the cool thing about this card is you cast it and you just start attacking. Because everyone's like, no, I'm not going to block that thing. You're just like, eat 1 damage. Send the message, as our shop owner would say.
Yeah, I mean, like, so I look at my Sphinx deck, for example, where I don't have a ton of enchantments, but
True Conviction
do have a
wins you
True
the game.
Conviction that wins me the game oftentimes. It's not like land tax is ever a bad card to go get for the most part. You can go grab, Darksteel Mutation and lock down the scariest thing in play. I mean, none of those are bad plays, but I don't think I'm going to put it in that deck. Whereas, Wheel of Fortune, to use that perfect example to begin with, if you're playing red, particularly mono red or Boros, it's worth running. And Academy Rector is not that. But if you're playing an Enchantress deck and you want one more piece for it, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting one, Metalworker.
Didn't this card just get unbanned recently?
Because you're not getting old, Chris, and it just seems like that. It's been like probably 5 or 6 years now, I would bet.
Like right when we started playing
I
again.
think it got
really?
unbanned. I think it got unbanned in Commander when... Was Bitter Blossom banned at one point in time, too?
I don't think so.
Or was that... I think it was unbanned. I think then Bitter Blossom was unbanned in Modern, maybe is what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I remember hearing about this getting unbanned.
Was this when they redid the ban list? When the ban for Commander and stuff got switched around? I think that's when it got
might have
taken
been.
off.
It was close to that point in time. I do remember Chris traded for a Rathalos
And then he got
right before it got banned.
That made me so mad.
I do recall that. So yeah, I think that was right in that kind of that loop where Arreo, I think the flip card that counters the first spell cast per turn ever was, and that got banned.
Yes.
Roughly the same time frame. So I think that's might have been when Metalworker came off. I read Metalworker in my Vela deck because I had one. I didn't go seek it out. I had a Metalworker. I built an enchantment. I built an artifact deck, so I put Metalworker in it. And it's really good whenever I draw it. But I also never feel like it doesn't change the tide of how that deck plays, I guess. But there's probably decks where it does.
I think if you were playing any Eldrazi Titan as your general,
Yes.
this would be a must-add.
Because you've got a gazillion artifact rocks already in that deck.
On turn 4, you could cast your 12-mana general very carefully.
Maybe in Brea, too, where you want to play Brea and use those activated abilities right away.
Yep.
Makes that way easier, too. So I think this kind of falls maybe into that Mishra's workshop thing where if you're playing that certain deck, it's backbreaking and nobody else cares about it.
I'd agree with that.
And I don't foresee this card going much higher than it is, unless it gets bought out or something stupid like that.
Yeah, I think the demand's already happened for the most part. If Brea didn't spike it, I don't know if anything else will.
Yep.
And I'm sure Brea did to a degree, but it didn't put it to $400 either, so it's probably
No.
going to stay where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, between Brea and the new Joyra, that this didn't go even higher. Yeah, I agree.
See, some of these cards are really hard for me to talk about because I play really expensive formats where I don't bat an eye at dropping
Sure.
$50 on a
Yeah.
card. So
we'll go to the last one on the reserved list here that we're talking about, which is Replenish. Again, I think, though, there's not much to say other than it's very similar to... Well, for those who don't know, Replenish brings all enchantments from your graveyard back to play, so we might as well mention that. It's a sorcery that does that. Again, I'd say Academy Rector are similar. If you're playing an Enchantress deck and you want to add one card to it, yeah, I would absolutely add Replenish or Academy Rector or Serra Sanctum. Those are worth it for those decks. Outside of that...
This card is not worth it for those decks. Because
you just win.
Doorknob players like myself who forget that there's an Eidolon of Blossoms in the graveyard and,
And you just deck yourself. But yeah, besides those decks, I think it's same as Sanctum, same as Academy Rector. You don't want it outside of an enchantment deck. But if you're playing that Enchantress deck, you want it.
Yeah.
So now we're going to look at some ones that are a little bit trickier here for the most part. I guess we did discuss Force and Mana Drain, and Scroll Rack. But now we're looking at ones that are all available to be reprinted at any point in time, and that's Mana. Start with Mana Crypt.
I still think it's worth it.
I mean, yes, your deck is better off with Mana Crypt than it is without one.
Why are you giving me the dirty look right now, Chris?
I'm not going to say a word about this card because I forgot what I said during our show with this card. Pretty sure I said it was trash, so I'm just going to stick with trash.
That is your comment for most cards we talk about on this show.
I don't
Bad card.
I run Mana Crypt in one deck right now.
Yeah, because
which is my Sphinx deck.
And you took Atlas apart.
Yep, took Atlas apart. So I have it in one deck, and I will probably put one into the Taste of Envoy of Ghost deck I'm working on. Because number one, it's an artifact. I'm making an equipment deck, so it's going to care about there's enough artifact synergy stuff in there, and she costs 7 mana.
Are you putting Metalworker in that deck?
Oh man, probably not. But
Because she costs 14 mana. So
she
you might as
does.
well.
Maybe I will. I could. I guess there's a bunch of artifacts I'm going to have. Maybe I would. I don't know.
I mean, I run this in 2 decks. No, I only run it in 1. I only run it in Dramoka.
Okay, but you probably would say the same thing. From a strict power level standpoint, you're better off with having this for the most part.
Right. I just don't have a second copy, or else, yeah, Brago would probably get one too. The thing with this is you can't negate the damage.
Right. You're always going to take...
Whether it's tapped or untapped, you risk taking that lightning bolt.
On average, you're taking 1.5 damage per turn off it.
Yep.
But that doesn't stop anyone from putting Bitter Blossom or Phyrexian Arena. I mean...
Right.
And in some ways, it's better than Soul Ring. Soul Ring almost always soaks up your land. You play your land, play your Soul Ring, and I guess you can do a Signet off, but that's it. There's plenty of times when you can drop your land and drop a Crypt and still have your colored mana source to cast your commander if it's a 3-drop commander.
Or a 6-drop commander.
Well, so if you also have a Vault and a Soul Ring,
yep,
or something, then you can play your land, play your Crypt, tap your Crypt to play the Vault or the Soul Ring, and then drop a 5 or 6 mana commander.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You know what? I think I'm going to buy one of these.
You don't have one for a deck right now?
No.
I thought you had it for one view. Oh, it's banned in one. No, it's not.
I borrow Max's
he borrows
all the
mine
time.
all the time.
Oh.
But what I'm going to do for this, because you get to flip a coin for this, I'm
You
going to
do.
get a double-sided coin.
And
Just
just call
I'm
heads.
gonna see who catches me on it. And then at the end of the game, I'll be like, "I'll see you guys. Here's my coin."
I did have a game once where someone had a Blood Bond combo out, but no trigger on it, and then it passed to me and realized I had my Crypt out. I'm like, oh well, let's see if we all lose right now. And I think I won 2 turns in a row because he couldn't trigger it back on his turn, so it came back to me. And I think I won 2 turns in a row, and we managed to kill the player who had the Blood Bond combo out before I lost the coin flip.
Spoiler, it was not me.
It was not Max.
Everyone's digging for removal for a mana crypt.
Yeah, right. Yes, the mana Crypt was the problem there. Jace the Mind Sculptor.
I know Chris has said this before, but I don't like this card in EDH.
No, I don't either.
It really doesn't do much for you. There are better, lower costed alternatives. The best thing he's doing is soaking up damage from hitting you in the face.
So, okay, yes, if I was running Mono Blue Super Friends, I would run Jace. But I don't know if he makes the cut in Banned Super Friends. There's multiple better Jaces. There's multiple better Jaces alone in Commander. I get why he's great in Modern. Although at this point in time, is he, Chris? He's been unbanned, and I have not heard much about him.
He still gets played, but he's getting played alongside Teferi, and Teferi just does stuff better.
Yeah.
Sure.
He's 1 more mana, but you untap land so you can play your control better. Jace is just kind of backup going, okay, if you do take care of Teferi, I'm going to win off the Jace then.
Sure. And there's also the danger with this, as with Mana Crypt, although you probably won't see this below the Mythic level, but they could get reprinted at any point in time.
Right.
Whereas when you buy that dual land, or you buy that Wheel of Fortune, or you buy that Replenish, or whatever it is, those probably aren't, the value is not going away on those. These could get reprinted at any point in time, and the value could drop.
Oh, he's already up to $90 again?
He's back up to 90, yeah. A lot of that's kind of muscle memory, though. I don't think the amount of Jace is getting played went back up. Noble Hierarch in Commander. Talking Commander. I don't think so. Not in Commander.
You have to be playing Bant or more.
Right.
Right
so,
there.
So that's the first problem. You need to be in a 3-color deck or more.
I'm not a big fan of mana dorks in Commander for the most
general, let alone ones that have to be played in Bant.
It does have Exalted, so it does fit into some. It helps you buff your commander if you're in a Voltron strategy.
Sure.
But I don't think it's worth it.
What do you think, Chris?
Awesome card. I love it. Next one.
In Commander.
No.
Not in Commander. Yes.
It is worthless. I'm in complete agreement with Max that mana dorks, aside from if you're playing elves or something like that,
where
Double
everything
duty.
there taps for mana.
Or if you have something that's creating X more mana than just one.
Or you're in a super aggro deck and you're going to utilize Crater Hoof, or you will need to get as much damage as fast as possible. They make sense, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, no. Hierarch, not worth it. And again, it'll get reprinted every 2 years in every other master set. It'll stay $70, true.
Right.
But yeah, it's just not necessarily good Commander.
My original Confluxes, I'm just whoa!
So we'll go to another series of lands here, because I think every single one of them is over 50 now. Enemy fetch lands.
For EDH.
For EDH.
I think this goes along the lines of the duels. I think it's if you want that perfect mana base and you want to be able to get your fixing done immediately, go drop the $50 on the cheapest one, which is probably the red-white one.
I think it's the black-white one.
I figured it was one of those two. Or go drop 100 on a Scalding Tarn.
Right.
If you want the fixing, or you're playing in a Lands Matter deck, sure. But I think on the 1 to 5 scale, like we did with the duels, this is the 4 or 5 spot versus the number 1 spot.
Chris, what do you think? Same thing?
You guys are too true to your game of I can't play enemy fetch lands in a non-enemy fetch land color deck.
Sure.
I'm turning the tide on that mainly because I'm a scumbag and I can't afford them anyways. So
I think if you can afford them, they are worth it.
Okay.
Because they're not super, super expensive. Now, yes, Scalding Tarn is, which is, I don't know why it's like that. That's just stupid.
Jeskai control.
But the other ones aren't, and I think they're worth it to help mana fix your deck.
I think Marsh Flats is the cheapest one of the bunch, and it's so they're not all over 50. Marsh Flats, the Modern Masters version, is like 36.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't say all of them are over 50, but we'll still.
The upside to this, and a lot of people don't agree with me on this, the shuffle makes a difference.
It can. It for sure can.
Yeah.
On the downside of it, though, there's enough times when you're like, oh, I don't want to lose the 1 life either. If it gets late, that always feels bad when it's late game and you're like, I think I can win or I'm going to lose next turn because I'm at 4 life and you draw a fetch land. You're like, ugh, I can't risk going down to 3 and that person has someone to do direct damage to me. So I just have this dead card in my hand. But that doesn't happen that much.
No.
I don't know. I don't think they're worth it myself. I think they're good cards and I think I have every fetch land I can run in every one of my decks. But I think that's because number 1
On color, Chris, yes.
On color. Yes, on color. But I think part of that's because number 1, I got more than play sets of all the lands from the allied colors when Khans was out. So that takes care of half of them.
Mm-hmm.
And just over the years, I've, either in collections or when they dropped a little bit when they reprinted in, is it M17? Or
Yes.
Master 17? I picked up a couple then too. So I have them in stockpile. But like if tomorrow, I don't have a Izzet deck, for example. If an Izzet commander came out tomorrow that I loved and wanted to build an Izzet deck, would I go buy a Tarn?
Probably not.
I don't think I would. I just don't think it's worth that deck. I think similarly talking about the dual lands, whenever there's a new thing like Battle Bonds lands or the Constarkir lands, whatever, not Cons, Amonkhet, whenever a new cycle of duels comes out, you need those fetches, maybe less and less and less. So it would be the last thing I would do until my deck was like, I have every card I want for it, then I might get it. But at this point in time, it's not. For me, I wouldn't chase them down.
Chris is the inverse.
I can't argue either way because it's hard for me to argue something knowing that I have playsets of all these cards.
Now, well, that's different too. If you have them, you might as well use them.
Yeah.
Now,
that's why I can't argue with it because it's like I'm just being.
Now, I'll ask this one, though, to you. So talking about if you have a Sliver deck and you were missing Sliver Queen, it would annoy you not having it.
Oh, yeah.
Does it bother you not having the perfect land base?
Yeah.
It does? Okay. It does me a little bit, too. It does annoy me.
Yeah.
And I think that might come from competitive play where I always want to be on color, on curve, perfect going, that kind of play.
There's a couple left here. Liliana the Veil.
Worthless.
In Commander, I think she is not good.
She's fine. I think some decks maybe if you like this card.
I think she's literally a 3-mana edict is all that she is.
I would say that's okay. I think she's not a bad card in Commander. I think she's better than Jace probably on average. But there's not a deck I've ever seen that I thought that person's deck would really turn their corner with Liliana in it.
Of course, Liliana's better than Jace.
Yeah. That's just a blanket easy statement.
Mox Opal.
Oh, this one's too situational in my opinion. The requirement of having Metalcraft to even do anything.
Yeah, I agree. I just put it in a deck. I just put it in my Vela deck. Because you happen to like,
Yep.
You're like, hey, Dana, do you want a Mox Opal? I've got to come in. Like the trade worked out. We had the stuff, so I put it in the deck. Again, though, I would say like on that CEDH level where you're like, okay, I'm building a CEDH deck, so I'm going to run Soul Ring and Crypt and Vault and Grim Monolith and Chrome Mox and Mox Diamond. Now I just accidentally have enough rocks that I probably can run Mox Opal too.
Yep.
At that level, you probably are running it because it's a perfect deck. Again, talking about, if you're playing a Brea deck where you're just accidentally going to have 30 artifacts, and if you have a Mox Opal from back when you played before or you cracked a pack and it happened to get one as an invention or something, yeah, you're
Lucky you.
Right, yeah. And I think most artifact decks are probably going to be better off with it.
Yep.
So if it's the last piece you need for your artifact deck, it's perfectly good. But
I still think at $100 is a little
it's
too
a
high
lot
for
of
it.
money.
I think it needs to go back down to the $50, $60 mark.
And this is one, every card all these cards could get reprinted, but talking about like Hierarch's going to just drift back up. The risk from Hierarchy's never getting banned. The risk for Mox Opal is if it gets banned in Modern,
It's done.
Yeah, I mean, then the only thing feeding it is EDH, and the limited play it's going to see in Vintage or Legacy. And it does see some play in those older formats, but like that's not enough to keep it at $100.
No, I don't think so.
Two more Planeswalkers here. We'll lump them together. Karn and Ugin.
Eugene!
I would say yes to Eugene and situational on original Karn.
Original Karn is definitely a monster in Modern. He doesn't usually scare me in EDH. I've seen him come down plenty of times, and there's absolutely times when the person who's playing a colorless deck, if you're playing colorless and you have limited removal options,
Definitely.
Absolutely,
It's literally a
for
Spine
sure.
of Isha.
You have Spine of Isha and you have Karn.
Yep.
So I guess like I give Meteor or Golem now. You have a few more options, but like you got a limited amount of options to remove stuff, and that's one of them.
Yes.
Whereas I think Ugin in a lot of decks is just useful.
Yeah, I mean I do believe Ugin's ult is way more powerful than Karn's
Yes.
could be.
It's also not annoying.
Yep.
Yeah. And just Ugin is just good removal.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ugin does so many different things with his upticks, whereas Karn, literally his downtick is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
In a multiplayer format, having a player exile a card from their hand is not going to get you places fast.
Right. Snapcaster Mage.
Worth it.
Worth it.
Yeah. There are bargain basement replacements for Snapcaster, whether it's Archaeomancer or Mission Briefing kind of gets you there too. He's so abusable, though. He's blinkable, and
The Flash.
the flash is so nice.
He's actually tutorable with, was it Mystical Teachings or something? It's a blue.
They get a card with flashback.
No, it's an
Or
4
flash.
mana instant. You can look for a card with flash, or an instant speed card.
Yep.
Yeah, Snapcatcher's worth it. Again, I would say not generically. It's not like Wheel of Fortune, but I think in a Spellslinger type deck, it's not wrong. You're never probably going to be wrong putting a Snapcaster in your deck because there's almost always going to be something in your graveyard worth casting.
Yeah, snapping back a Charter Course is definitely worth it in my
Yeah,
opinion.
probably.
Draw two cards.
I think the best snapbacks are when you go onto your turn with 6 mana. Oh, I'll play him, and then I'll snap back the Supreme Verdict and wipe the board again.
Or give you the option, like, okay, and what have I got here? Oh, I got a Snapcaster in hand, and my graveyard has a counter spell and a draw spell. Oh, cool.
Yep.
I can do whatever of those two things I want to do in my turn, or before the end of the turn. I can deal with a problem, or I can just draw cards for value.
Yep.
Last one on the list, which already got mentioned, Teferi. Max, you're playing a Teferi in the deck, at least.
It's totally worth it.
He's not the best Planeswalker in Commander.
But he's really good.
So I think there's a bit of the Jace thing where like his impact on Modern and on Standard isn't what it is in Commander. There's much better Commander Planeswalkers, but he's very, very good. Chris, is he worth it in Commander?
Oh, he's worth it as a playable card, yes. The price point, no. Because, and this is the one thing I'm going to say, he's in Standard. Once he gets out of Standard,
right.
he is not going to be as expensive as
This
he
is
right
literally the only card on the list that's in Standard right now. And this isn't just Standard play. Like you said, he sees play in other formats. So it's not just Standard driving that price. And I don't know how much he'll drop. He's not going to drop to 20, but he's
getting played in a lot of Standard decks, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of them out there. Dominaria is the most open set of all time at this point.
Yes.
Until maybe Ravnica. We'll see how these
Or
two
the
sets
Spark,
do. Right.
yeah.
Because the game is on
Infinity
on another big uptick right now. But
Bring me Bolus!
Ugin's coming. I just know it.
and also Teferi is really generically good in any deck that can play him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those abilities are always useful.
All his modes, his ult, probably not as good in Commander as it is in other formats, but his other two modes are pretty good.
Yeah. So that is Breaking the Bank. So I know this is an after Christmas one, but you have now a full 11 months to hint to your grandma what she can get you for your deck for next Christmas.
We'll be back next week with special guest DJ from Jumbo Commander. Until then, I am Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.